Hey guys, thank you for joining us today on this premiere video, man, where we're going to be installing a Holley Terminator X system on this truck right back here known as Sleepy Joe. But before we get started, man, I want to thank each and every one of you for stopping by today and just, making this channel what it is, for the likes, the comments, man, the support. Greatly appreciated. So this is what we have, guys. For those of you who don't know, this is a 6-liter LS engine. It came out of a 2005 Escalade. Now, as you may notice, some of the harness is already in, especially the one for the fuel injectors, and I didn't remove this because once we had to fix the harness, this wasn't necessary to be removed because it has actually a detachable plug that comes with the kit. So this is what they call the fuel injection harness. Now, as you guys already know, if you've been following the channel, we had an issue with this harness that got crushed as we installed the transmission onto the engine. It got crushed between the bell housing and the engine block. Here is the Terminator X harness, and it's pretty much all labeled, so it's not that difficult of an install. I mean, I was able to do it, and I'm not a handyman or an electrical guy by any means, but they made it to such a way that the do-it-yourselfer could put this all together. So guys, this is the area of the harness that got damaged. As you can see, it's all taped up back together. The wire loom is still on it. We, heat shrunk, and all the connections were done properly, correctly with these special, butt connectors that actually, you gotta solder them in. So this is what we use for the connections, and you can see they're pretty neat. They have, they heat shrink and then they solder right here where they meet the cable, and these are in different sizes, so you could see, but they worked pretty well. So we had that all in here, and all that is sealed up. It was around 28 cables, to believe it was that many. But that's what actually wires this whole part of the harness, including the ignition coils on that side. That's why the truck was misfiring. I guess once it got crushed in this area here, it ended up, creating some kind of ground issue, when all of them got smushed in the heat and all that stuff. So you can see how much got affected. All of this, you got the, your fuel sensor, you got your oil sensor, you got your map sensor. You have multiple sensors in this area, and all those got affected by that damage. So these are some of the tools that I'm going to be using. I got a wire crimper, I got some extra wire if needed. Obviously I got a multimeter, and I got just a test light. Nothing fancy, but it should get the job done. So the first thing that you want to do is, and I can't stress this enough, is disconnect the negative off your battery terminal. You don't know how many times I've had issues with this where I've taken that shortcut and I've exploded fuses, caused sparks. I mean, it's a mess, and it could really hurt this system. So take the precaution and just, disconnect the negative off your battery. Now, to remind you guys, the Holley does come with instructions, and there's also a manual online at holley.com, which, depending on which kit you bought or which part number you have, because there's different applications. There's for Ford, Chrysler, Dodge. This is for actually a Chevy engine. This is a 24X. They got 58X if this is particular to Chevy, and some of these harnesses tend to change, but there are instructions online as well, according to your application or depending on what you bought. So here we have the ECU. I've gone ahead already and I've installed it in a location under the dash. I've seen some people put it in the engine bay, under the dash, under the seat. It all depends where you want to, install the ECU and where it's more accessible to you. I chose the firewall just because I wanted it, a little hidden, and and it worked good for this application. So real quick, and you can see the ease of this installation. Holley comes with this plug, which is your main power. It's got a red and a black, positive and negative, and that cable will go all the way to your battery, whether your battery is mounted in the front location or stock location, or like in this particular case, it's mounted on my truck bed. So I ran these two cables, and it comes with a pretty extensive harness. I think it's like 20 feet that it comes with, or maybe 15, I'm not exactly sure, but I went, drilled right through the floor and ran that all the way back to the battery, and I'll show you guys that in a moment. All right guys, so back at the battery over here again. As you can see, I got the positive of the Holley coming all the way to the battery, and here's the other negative. It already comes with these connectors on it, you know, so it makes that much easier. You see this second cable here? Holley also requires you to run this other cable straight to the battery. I mean, you could run it to somewhere where it's 12-volt hot consistently, but I chose to not have any kind of interference, to run it all the way to the battery. So that cable that I talked about is this cable right here, which now is cut, because when I ended up having to remove the harness to fix it, I had to cut this cable. This is a cable that I ran. I think it's a 10-gauge cable. I ran it all the way from the harness, because this is going to plug into the harness. This is going to be your main power to the harness, to basically the engine harness. So I took that same time, since I was already running the positive and the negative to the battery. I just got this cable, which doesn't come with the kit. This is a cable that I had to buy. I think I bought like 50 feet of it, and I ran it in the harness all the way back to the battery. So this is coming 12-volt hot from the battery constant, and it's gonna be spliced in to the harness of the Terminator. So back at the harness, this was that red 12-volt constant that I was talking to you about, that we had cut when we had to remove it. This one's coming all the way from the battery. You could probably wire it to something 12-volt that's continuously hot in the vehicle, but I chose the battery to do so. So this is your main power for the whole harness. And then over here, guys, you have your ground cable, which will go to a ground, chassis ground. Try to find yourself a good clean ground to ground it to. And then here, this red and white cable is your accessory for the harness. So this is a 12-volt key on, which I already found that cable inside the car. And that's it. That's basically it for this harness. You know, ground, key on, constant 12-volt. Also, real quick, I found that it was easier for me to feed the harness through the firewall from the inside of the truck into the engine bay than it would have been the opposite way around. And that being because these two cables that are wiring up, you know, the ECU, you know, these main harness cables, they were pretty thick to go through that hole. So, you know, everything else was pretty much manageable, had smaller plugs. So there was already, I want to say, like an 1.5 inch hole at the firewall, so I was able to run it all through there. Okay, so that is the hole that we're going to be feeding the harness through. And here is the rubber grommet that was from factory, because that was part of the old harness that used to go to the, you know, original engine before. So I had to actually like cut this a little bit down the middle for it to fit, and obviously drill this out. It's not the prettiest, but it'll work, and like that it'll help. I mean, I can't stress it enough. You don't want no cables rubbing on any kind of metal, causing any kind of friction, causing any kind of short. Again, guys, this is a one-man operation. I do not have any kind of help, so it might take a little longer than normal, but man, I'm showing you guys that anyone could do this. Anyone could wire this Terminator X. I could have used the factory. A lot of people use the factory harness and they get a standalone and stuff, but for the price, the Terminator X, I mean, it's just a way to go for tunability. If you decide to add any kind of performance power adders, it'll do nitrous, turbo, you know, it'll run your fuel pump, run your fans. I mean, it's really the way to go. Alright guys, so we have ran the harness through the firewall, and thank God for time lapses, because definitely it took a little longer than expected. The first time when I had done this, I think I didn't have the intake in or the frame rails, so it made it easier to loop those cables through the back and rearrange everything nicely. But real quick, and I'm going to show you guys, when this says plug and play, it's basically as simple as this. You know, here's your ignition. Let's fix this here a little bit better. Here's your ignition. That's it, plugged and played. Everything is labeled, everything is color matched. You can see here's the fuel. You know, I got my sensor over here. That's a low dollar motorsport fuel pressure sensor. We got the MAT sensor, and to just show you the ease of it, we just look for the MAT wherever that's at, which I believe is this one over here. Just like that. And then, like I said, I'm gonna obviously organize everything good. We'll go to the next one. This is your CTS, I believe. Yeah, it's your control temperature. You find your control. temperature sensor right here, and you just plug and play. And like that, guys, I'm going to continue going through all of them, and you just got to match where they are. The TPS is the one that was giving me problems. I believe it's this one right here. So this TPS was the one that wasn't reading, and like I said, guys, all of these were crushed, you know, because of that bell housing. So there's a fuel injection one back there that we'll go through, and I'll show you guys once they're all plugged in. So real quick, guys, right before I plug all this in, this is the moment where it could get interesting as far as on your end, depending how creative you want to be and how you want to hide the wires and how you want to snake them through different areas. But I try to do my wiring as clean as possible, so it might be a little time consuming, but you know, that all depends on how you want it. These right here are going to come in handy, so make sure you have an ample amount of zip ties. You probably will need it. One more thing that I forgot to show you guys right before I do this is that there's this cable that grounds to the back of the cylinder head. So, you know, I got a bolt back there. You could see it right there. It's right behind there, right on the cylinder head there, orange head. That one is where I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do the same on the other side. Also, guys, make sure that when you're running this harness, you realize that they have, on the ignition, they have the odd size, and on the other side, you will see that it has an even side. So out on the driver's side, even on the passenger side. So make sure you get that right. But yeah, we're gonna plug all this in. All right, guys, so the driver's side is done. We got the bolt grounded to the head. We got the injector harness connected. We got the ignition coil connected, and all the sensors on this. We got the MAT, TPS sensor, IAT or IAC, the fuel, low dollar motorsport, and the temperature sensor down here. So everything is connected on the driver's side. We're gonna walk around and do the same on the passenger. Guys, now on this particular application, it's a little different on the passenger side. This map sensor, which would go connected here, up in here, I'm not really using this map sensor. I'm using the Holley one that's integrated into the Holley, which is controlled by this vacuum hose, and you'll see it on the inside. So this right here could eventually is gonna get tucked away, and then all we really got on this side, other than the fuel injector harness, which is already connected over here, and I didn't touch none of this. These are EV1 style injectors, so those plugged in accordingly. And then all we got is the ignition coil, which we're gonna plug that in right there. And then we got these two wires. This one's for your crank sensor. So this one I would have to remove the starter, which is already removed down there because it's right behind these headers, and it's real tough to get into. And you know, they give it with this insulation just in case it's gonna come in contact with any kind of heat, which it should, you know, with those mufflers, and then I mean those headers. And then right here you got your wideband O2 sensor, which I haven't shown you guys what I did in the bottom, but that's gonna go to another harness. It's gonna attach to the wideband sensor itself, and then for that application you're gonna need to weld a bung to your exhaust if you don't have one. And they give you a diagram on how to do that, and they provide a bung as well that you could like I said, weld into your exhaust. But once I jack up the car to connect these two cables, we will see that down there. All right, guys, so now that we're under the truck, you can see the bung welded onto the exhaust, and you can see the O2 sensor. Now that O2 sensor is going to run to the harness that you saw from the top. Now right here you're able to see the plug that's going to plug into the one that I already have here. Alright guys, so there you see the other plug, the crank sensor plug, and you see exactly where it's going to plug in. There's the plug right there, and there is the sensor in black. There's the plug. So usually for this application you have to remove the starter to get access to it, and that's exactly what we did. Guys, let me tell you that access and that location for that plug is one of the most pain in the you know what plugs to put in, but it's in. You can see it there. So we're gonna put the starter back on, and that should wrap up this bottom portion. All right, guys, so a quick little recap. We have done everything to the engine, so the whole harness is connected, injectors, coils, you know, everything on top, all the sensors. Don't mind this, man. This is my little nitrous connection that we're gonna leave for the next video, but for right now, let's focus on the task at hand. So the whole harness is done on the engine. We did the crank sensor in the bottom, and we also did the oxygen sensor as well, or the O2 sensor, like, you know, it's mostly known by. And now we're gonna go inside the truck and wrap this baby up. All right, guys, so we are at the home stretch. We got this rubber grommet already put on. Here's the harness. I've already put some butt connectors on these cables that I had marked. Here's the red one, the 12-volt positive, already connected right from the harness all the way to the battery. This green cable here that you guys see here is the one used for the fuel pump. So, I mean, before I used to have it on a switch with another relay, but Holley brings their own relay, as you can see right there. And if you connect, which is pretty cool, if you connect this green wire to your fuel pump, once you turn the key on, the Holley will prime it, and you can set, I guess, the amount of seconds that you want it, you know, for it to prime the pump, but the Holley will prime it. A lot of people, when they're working on their car, if they have a switch on it, they could turn the switch on and off as well, like that. You know, it won't continue to prime it and prime it and prime it. So I'm not gonna connect it on a switch right now. I'm gonna connect it directly, and we're gonna run it that way. Here is the ground cable for the harness, which I already found a ground. It's behind the dash there that I had set up. Make sure you find a good ground. And then here is the red and white cable, which is the ignition, which I already have it set up with this cable that I'm running from an ignition key on, and make sure that it's key on, you know, consistently, because some of these key on, when you turn the key on, it'll lose power, you know, while it's cranking. So cranking, key on, if that makes any kind of sense. Well, that's what they told me to do, and that's what I did. So we're gonna plug those things up. Probably put the harness up here and put some zip ties on it, and then I'm gonna just plug in both plugs, both harness plugs that are somewhere right up in here, and finish this off. Okay, guys, so it's been a journey. We were able to get the harness fully in. We were able to plug the ECU, get all that done. So now we're in the final stretch, man. I appreciate you guys for staying tuned to this long, and now we're gonna see if this is all gonna work. All right, guys, so you see everything is plugged in, guys. All the harness into the ECU, the relays, all the cable connections are done up here. This blue cable, guys, is also part of the harness, and it's used for a tack. So if you are going to run an external tack, just would be, you know, the wire for your power. I like the look of the big tack. So the LCD screen has a tack, you know, which is good as well, but I like the big tack with the shift light and all that good stuff. So guys, another thing that you may want to buy is this. It's a CAN bus splitter. So when you buy these kits, I think they got different prices. Some will come with the handheld, some won't. I opted mine's with the handheld, so like I could try to do a little bit of tuning and at the same time have my gauges and all that good stuff. This would take the spot of having to buy all these temperature, oil. This will do it for you. And they got them, you know, an even bigger dimensions, you know, as far as this screen is concerned. But this one works fine with my application. So mine's, I got it with it. And in order for this to communicate, and in order for you to also have USB to plug in into a laptop for tuning, you gotta get this piece. And it's by Current Performance. That's who I ordered it from online. And this is their splitter, so I could plug this into the computer and still have my handheld connected, because if not, you would have to do one or the other. Okay guys, at this time we could go ahead and connect back our negative on our battery. All right, the moment of truth, guys. We have already plugged in our battery, and we're gonna give the key a twirl, and we're gonna see if it wants to start. So here we're gonna turn the key on. We hear the fuel pump priming, so that's a good sign. All these lights are on. Before, that light used to be green, and the bottom, I think the fourth one was red, which was giving me a TPS error. Right now the monitor is on. Let's see if we can switch this and put the multi-gauge mode and see what we got over here. That's not it. That's not it either. All right, this is it. So right off rip, guys, we see that the matte sensor before, I know you guys didn't see it, but it used to be 215 constant. Battery's a little low, should be at 12.6, but it's at 12.2 right now. It just probably needs a charge. Now the IAC position wasn't reading right. I was getting an error on the temperature sensor. The TPS was an error as well. So now we see that this is all right. So we've primed the pump. Let's see if it turns on. Let's hope. And we got it, guys. Yes. Yes, guys. The truck is alive. Well, there you have it, guys. Sleepy Joe is alive and soon to be back in action, man. So I really hope that this video helped you out in some kind of way. I mean, we tried our best to install this Terminator step by step so that you guys could pick up and see how easy it was. And I mean, it did take a little longer than expected, but that's with anything, man. I was by myself, but I had you guys along for the ride, man. So guys, at the airing of this video, we're probably getting ready to hit Dig or Die, which is upcoming this Friday. So that's going to be a good one, man. We're not taking Sleepy Joe just not yet, maybe in the future, but we are going to be live streaming the whole event Friday night and all Saturday, man. And we're going to be flying into Rockingham, North Carolina. It's going to be an epic event. I hope you guys are subscribed to the channel so you guys don't skip a beat or miss a beat. And I'm getting ready, man, to get a little haircut, you know, to make sure I look fly for the event. But yeah, guys, man, it's been a pleasure. Always remember, guys, love God, love your family, and always love racing. See you on the next one.